Your mornings begin with a resolution for a jog, but snooze buttons continue to sing a tempting lullaby. Your book lays untouched on the nightstand as you keep spending your evenings scrolling social media. The salad ingredients you bought lie sadly abandoned in your fridge as the aroma of pizza seduces your senses. Why does it have to be this hard to form a good habit and make it stick? How to make life both fun and good for your well-being. Dr Philippa Lally is a senior lecturer in psychology at the University of Surrey in England. She obtained her PhD at University College London for her work on habitual behaviour and weight control, and continues to investigate the role of habits in human health. Dr. Lally is a co-director of the Habit Application and Theory Research Group with Dr. Benjamin Gardner. She is currently also co-principal investigator of the Approach trial, which uses habit-based advice and mobile app to promote brisk walking among adults living with and beyond cancer. In today's episode, we talk about the scientific definition of habit and about its common understanding. We debunk some myths related to habit formation. How long does it really take to develop a new habit? We talk about whether indeed good habits have the power to impact your health and about different strategies on making good habits stick and the bad ones go away. We also discuss Dr. Lally's research work and her opinion on the popular book Atomic Habits, which, by the way, also cites Dr. Lally's work. Listen to this episode and get to know the power of habit. Are you ready? Tune in with Healthy Habits Podcast. Tell me, as a habit researcher, do you personally have some habits that you just didn't manage to put into reality in your daily life?
Many. Yeah, there are many things that I would like to do in my daily life that I don't manage to do. Mostly because I don't manage to prioritize my time appropriately. So I used to do quite a bit of exercise, and I'm not doing nearly as much as I would like to anymore, because I'm not finding the time in my days with lots of work and children and all those sorts of things. So that's the biggest one for me, I think, that I would like to be doing more of. But there are lots of, I think when any of us look at our lives, there are lots of things we wish we were doing that we're not. Well, maybe there are some people not. But yeah, I definitely, despite all my knowledge of habits, I don't have all those that I'd like to have.
Okay, well, that can cheer up some of us. I think that even if you do have the knowledge on how to put your dream life into reality, it's not always possible. That there are many obstacles on the way of doing that.
Yeah.
First, as always, I think I would like to start by the definition of habit. When I was doing some bibliographical research on my own, I seemed to notice that there are maybe two notions regarding to habits, and it's related to automatical behavior or intentional behavior. And I don't know, from what I understand, it seems that there seem to be two significations of the habit. One being a more common understanding that we have in our daily lives, which is that habit is an intentional action, that we want to do something or we want to stop doing something. And so we call that a habit. But in the scientific research, very often we have this notion of automaticity. Could you tell me what's your perspective on that, whether I'm completely wrong, and what's the definition of habit that you use?
Yeah. So what's confusing is that in general in our lives, people often use the word habit, but what they usually mean are things that we do often. So anything that we do often, we'll often say, I have a habit for doing it. But that is different from the psychological definition. So habit researchers are focused on the concept of automaticity. And it's quite difficult to give a very short definition, but I can explain to you what we mean by habit. So Dr. Ben Gardner and I consider habit to be a process. And that's because the behaviour that you do at the end, or the behaviour that you do, could be a habitual behaviour, and you do it because you have a habit. But we can't call that behaviour the habit and call it the behaviour, because sometimes you can have a habit but not actually perform the behaviour. So what happens is, when you do something in the same situation over and over again, you form a link in your memory, in your brain, between the situation and the action, which then means after enough repetitions, you go into that situation, you encounter that situation, and you experience an impulse. That connection in your brain is activated, and then you experience an impulse, not a conscious impulse, but there is an impulse to act in that same way. And if nothing stops you, you will perform that habitual behavior. So we call that the habitual behavior, but the whole thing, the whole habit, is a habit process. Because if you were about to perform the action you normally do, and I jump in your way and go, stop, don't do it, then you won't do it. But it doesn't mean you don't have the mental association that's the basis of the habit. It just means that you haven't done it on that occasion.
So that means that all habits are automatic, and that this intention that we might have, it's like there's no such thing as intentional behavior in habit. It's always just a cue and the association and the action to perform something.
Yeah, so the habit mechanism is about automaticity. So that's separate from intention. Now, you can intentionally create a habit. So you can say, I want to have a habit for eating fruit after lunch, and you can create a situation where you do eat fruit after lunch every day, and that will then form that association and you will have a habit. But the habit mechanism is separate from the intentional mechanism. And we often talk about a dual system approach, where there are these two parts of the system that can lead to behavior. And often those two parts are working in the same direction. So my intention is to eat fruit after lunch, and I have a habit for eating fruit after lunch, and that's all great. The problem comes when our intentions and our habits are in opposition. So that's why people often talk about having bad habits. The habit mechanism is the same. It's only a bad habit because it's something that you wish you didn't do, but you are still doing. And so you have an intention in one direction and a habit in the other direction. And that's when we become aware of our habits. The rest of the time, we're not really aware of them. They're there. They're helping us in our day. They're meaning that we don't have to think. You know, I don't have to get up in the morning and think about a lot of the things I do in that first hour, because they're the same things I do every day in that first hour. And so they just automatically proceed. And I can be thinking about, oh, what am I doing today? Am I giving a lecture? Who am I meeting? And all of those other things. Whereas if I didn't have those habits, I'd be having to think, okay, I feel hungry. What am I going to eat? I need to get dressed. What am I going to wear? You know, all of those things, which can just proceed efficiently because I have habits.
So does it mean that you think there is no clear distinction between those automatic actions that we have, like dressing up, or I don't know, closing the cupboard when we take the mug from it, and from more complex actions, like, I don't know, reaching out for a cigarette, where there is a whole process of engaging in this habit?
Yeah, so the complexity of behaviour is something that has been discussed a lot in the habit literature. And when we first there was a lot of research in habits kind of a long time ago, and then there was a big period of time where people didn't think about habits. And then when people started kind of thinking about them a bit more in psychology, kind of 20 years ago, we kind of struggled, because the idea that I could go for a run automatically, get back and not realize I'd done it, but like, oh, I went for a run, that's a surprise, was ridiculous. Yeah. And we all acknowledged it was ridiculous, but we didn't quite know how to think about things. And then Ben Gardner and Alison Phillips published a couple of really helpful papers where they talk about a distinction between the instigation of a behavior and the execution of a behavior. So behaviors that are more complex and happen over a period of time, if you think about the starting of the behavior and then the doing it. So if you think about going for a run, there's the getting out of the house to begin a run, and then there's where you run, how fast you run, and all of that. Now, either of those parts could be habitual or not. So it could be that I go for runs at different times of day, different situations, but once I get out for a run, I always run 5K and I always run it at a certain pace and it's always go the same route and it's exactly the same. So that would be not habitually instigated, but habitually executed. Or I might have a habit of always going for a run first thing when I wake up in the morning. So it's instigated habitually, but then I might go a different route. Excuse me, go a different route. I might run faster or slower or, different distance. And it's the starting of the behavior, the instigation, that really predicts whether we do these things in our lives. So when we're delivering advice to people now, when we're trying to promote them, helping them to start something, particularly physical activity, we say focus on the getting out, focus on getting the right equipment and leaving the house to go on your walk or go on your run. If you only go a little way to start with, that's absolutely fine. You can build that up over time, but the getting out there and doing it is the starting to build that habit.
So do you think that in the beginning of habit formation is this instigation that is more important?
Yes. I mean, there are some situations where obviously what you are interested in is execution. So if you're a dentist and what you care about is how people are brushing their teeth, then it's about the execution. But mostly, often what we're talking about is trying to get people to start a new behavior and get that to be a regular part of their lives. And in those cases, it's the beginning of the behavior that is the bit that people should be trying to do consistently in the same way.
Mm-hmm. So could you, if we're there, could you perhaps develop a bit more on habit formation in general? So how does a habit form? So we've talked about the instigation. What's the role of a cue in this instigation process, and how does it look like?
Yeah, so the habit is an association between the situation, which you could call a cue, and the action, the behavior. So to form a habit, you need to repeat the same action, which could be starting to go out for a run. It doesn't have to be the full run. Keep doing that same behavior in the same situation so that your brain can form the association. So in order to do that, people have to think through what they want to do. So we often have very broad goals. We often say, I want to lose weight, I want to be fitter, I want to spend more time reading, all sorts of broad goals that we have in our lives. But we don't always take the time to break that down into what action are you actually going to do in what situation. And you need to take the time to do that planning, to work out where you have time in your life, where it would fit, create an environment that is supportive, so the chance of you doing it is as high as possible. And then it sounds simple, it's not simple, but it's that the instruction is simple. You just have to do it in the same situation over and over and over again, and it will become easier and it will start to feel automatic, to the point that at some point it should get to a level where you are just continuing to do that without having to plan or intend to in the moment. It just proceeds unless something gets in the way.
And what's the role of motivation in the habit formation? It's obvious, I think, that, well, you have to be motivated to do something, to start a new habit, for example, in order to then do it and accomplish what you want. But very often we see that motivation is very good at the beginning of the habit. And then, well, there are certain days where you don't have the motivation, where motivation just wears off. So what's your view on that? Is motivation really that important? And what should we do in this later process of our habit formation, where the motivation is perhaps not that high?
Yeah. So motivation is a very difficult concept because it's quite a broad concept and it's quite hard to kind of get a handle on how to help someone be motivated. It's often easier to focus on other things, like how do we help people believe that they can do it? How do we help people feel confident in their abilities and those sorts of things? You're right. It is easy. When we first set out to do something, we are usually focused on it, we're thinking about it. And after a few weeks, there are other things that come into our lives and we can easily lose that motivation. So one thing to do is we need to set up our environments so that doing that behavior is the easiest thing to do. So if I want to eat fruit after lunch, if I have lunch at my desk at work, and on my desk I have chocolate and not any fruit, it's very unlikely I'm going to eat fruit, because I have to go and get it, and that's a big effort, and I've got something delicious right in front of me. If all I've got around me is fruit and there is nothing else, then it's much more likely that I'm going to eat fruit in that setting. So in the times that we have energy, motivation, whatever you want to call it, we have the resources to focus, we need to set ourselves up so that in the times when we know that our resources are going to be depleted, it's easy for us to do the thing that we still wanted to do. And there are lots of ways. So it might be about physically what you have in the environment. It might be about who's with you in different situations. You can use buddy systems to help you. If I plan to go for a run in the morning on my own, it's very easy for me to roll over when my alarm goes off and not do it. But if I know my friend's turning up on my doorstep in 10 minutes, then I'm going to get out of bed, because I'm not going to leave them standing out in the cold on their own. So there are lots of things we can put in place for ourselves to make it more likely that we will do it. It's in the moment that it's often hard, and there are other demands on us. And there are lots of, you can make commitment devices where you make some form of commitment, where if you don't do it, there's a sanction. Lots of things that we can do, but it's about thinking about it carefully and knowing yourself a bit to be like, I know it's going to be hard in this situation, but also try to plan things that aren't so hard. If you want to take up exercise, try to take up an exercise you might actually enjoy. Don't punish yourself and do something that you think you're going to hate. Find a way to make it fun, because in terms of forming habits, the more rewarding it is in the moment that you do it, the stronger that habit should form, the quicker it should form. That's based on the kind of neuropsychology literature of how those associations are made. So it's not just about, I'll say to myself, if I do it every day this week, at the end of the week, I get some sort of prize or reward. You need to make it fun in the moment. There are lots of different ways that you can do that. It depends on the behavior, but try to choose something that is fun for you anyway, that you enjoy. And then also, if there's something you can add in. So with exercise, if you think it's going to be not as enjoyable, well, think, how can you make it more enjoyable? Are you actually someone that likes exercising in the gym, or do you prefer being in nature? If you prefer being in nature, then that's the plan that you should make, not to go to a gym where you don't enjoy it so much. Can you listen to an audiobook while you exercise? Can you listen to music? Can you use it as a time to go with a friend and chat to a friend? Is there something that you want to do in your life that you can link with this thing that you feel like you should do in your life, so that both things can get done?
And if you have to do something that you really hate, is there some kind of a magic solution to that?
Try to make it less hateful somehow. I guess there are things we have to do that we absolutely hate, but there's usually some way we can make it less awful.
Maybe just do them like the first thing that you have to do during the day, just like get them off the list, and that's done.
Definitely. I think getting things, because if you have things hanging over you as this thing that you've got to do that you don't want to do, it becomes bigger, it becomes worse. Whereas if you just say, right, I'm going to get up in the morning, do it, done, then I'm going to do something that I really enjoy. If you can't do the thing you really enjoy at the same time as the thing you don't, then at least do something you really enjoy straight afterwards.
Mm-hmm. Is there some kind of a magical time frame of how long does it take to form a habit? I know that you did a study on that, and I know that it's a controversial topic, that there are various magic numbers that tell us how long does it take.
Basically, there is no magic number. Mm-hmm. So there was this myth that it takes 21 days to form a habit. But that seems to have been from a plastic surgeon who was reporting on how long it takes his patients to get used to a new limb or not having a limb or something, which is obviously a completely different thing, but it became part of kind of folklore. So I conducted a study published in 2010 where we tried to investigate this. We asked people to choose a behaviour that they could do once a day, but only once a day in a specific setting that was the same every day. So basically the cues were getting up, going to bed, or meal times, because those are the only things we do every single day of the week. But just to try and keep it consistent, I wanted it to be a behaviour that they did it once a day. And they then went off and they chose their own behaviours so that it was something that they wanted to do. They were eating an activity or drinking behaviours. And then they did it every day.
But they also reported how automatic it felt for them each day to do this behaviour. And we tracked and we statistically modelled how how their automaticity went up over time. So it went up and then it kind of reached a flat line where they'd reached their maximum level of automaticity. And then we looked at how long it took them to get to that maximum point. And the average was 66 days, but the range of the statistically modelled time was 18 to 254, which is obviously a massive range. So what we kind of learned from that was it's hugely variable. There is no one magic number. It's really different for different people. And what's important is that people know that it's very variable and they know that it can take a while, but that if you keep going, you will get to that point where it feels automatic and where you where it happens easily and it's part of your life. So it's kind of helping, but what we need to do is help keep people going until they reach that point.
Does it also depend on the activity, do you think?
Yes, I think it does, but I don't think we fully understand which aspects of the activity matter in terms of how automatic it becomes. And there's kind of lots of factors, things about the cues, things about the behavior, how rewarding it is. There's a lot of fun research we still need to do to try and kind of find the things that can help people form habits quicker.
And how does it apply to bad habits? Especially, it wonders me because we have addictions, and in addictions, it can be even one time that we do something and we're instantly addicted. So it's probably the case for some of the drugs. So why does it work in a different way for the bad habits? Why do we seem to be more prone to engage in those habits that are bad for us? And what's the difference between a habit and an addiction?
Yeah, so this is kind of all about reward value. So if something is really, really enjoyable in the moment that you do it, the association seems to form a lot more quickly and it's much stronger. Addiction and habits are linked, and it's quite difficult to separate them for addictive behaviours. But if you think about smoking, sometimes if someone tries to quit smoking, sometimes they experience urges to smoke which are based on a biological craving for something. So that's to do with the addictive nature of it. But also, there was an interesting study that Sheena Orbell and Basfer Plunken did, where when the smoking ban came in the UK, they found that smokers, even though they totally intended to abide by the ban, they knew that they now were not allowed to smoke inside the pub, they would find themselves lighting up a cigarette when they sat down to have a beer in a pub because they had a habit. So there's kind of both things going on there. There's the addictive nature of those behaviours, but there's also, if they're things that people do frequently, there's also just that habit. In this situation, I do this behaviour. But you could be addicted to cigarettes and smoke them in completely different places at every time of day. You'd still be addicted, but all those times wouldn't be a habit. But as I said, bad habits are only bad because we don't want them. So the mechanism is the same. It's about how rewarding it is in the moment that you perform the behaviour, and that relates to how quickly the habits form. And reward is a really complicated concept in humans. So when we're thinking about rats, it's easy. We're thinking about, they enjoy the sugar that they have or the pellet that they eat. Whereas humans find different things rewarding. So I might find something rewarding, not because it's physically rewarding in any way, but because I'm thinking, oh, this makes me a good person, or this relates to my identity, or I know this is good for me and I like that, or I think that other person thinks I can see they're seeing me do it, so they're going to think that I'm, there's all these things that humans think about that we kind of assume there's slightly less going on in rats' brains. So that's partly why it's so complicated.
I see. And could you perhaps just describe in broad terms on a neuronal level, how does a habit form?
I'm not sure I'm the best person to explain that because I'm not a neuropsychologist. I'm kind of a behavioral psychologist. So the way I understand it is kind of just like it's a network of kind of nodes or whatever you want to think of it as, and each time you perform the behavior, that link gets stronger and stronger and stronger.
Mm-hmm.
If a cue is not very specific to that behavior, then I think things get more complicated in that network. So if I've got a situation in which I do a whole bunch of different things, then when I encounter that situation, a whole load of lines, if you think about it, it was blobs and lines, will be activated, which then makes me a bit complicated, a bit confused. I don't know I don't know what's activated. Whereas if there's one situation, one action, when I make a cup of tea, after I put the tea bag in my mug, I always put a spoon of sugar in my mug. That's a very specific tea bag sugar. There's no tea bag, something else getting activated in my brain. Then that's stronger. So if you want to form a habit, we always say try to choose a cue that's very specific for that behavior rather than something where there's lots else going on. So that's kind of how I think about it in the brain, but I'm sure a neuropsychologist could give you a more technical answer.
No, I think it's good. It's just so that we understand like more or less how it works, the mechanism. So I think it's perfect. Hey, if you're still listening, that means that you enjoyed this podcast. We love sharing with you, speaking with our guests, and we are happy to bring all this information to you for free. However, if you like what we're doing and you wish to support our work so that we may keep developing this project, visit our website, hhpodcast.buzzsprout.com, and click the support button to make a donation. You can also follow us on Instagram or subscribe us on YouTube. And don't forget to share our podcast to a friend or a family member if you like it. All the links are available in the description of this episode. And now, back to our conversation. I wanted to ask you, because you work on habits, and in particular, you try to work out how can habits contribute to our health and well-being. Do you believe that by creating good, healthy habits, we can actually ameliorate our well-being, and what to do in order to make this approach more popular, if you do believe that it's possible?
Yeah, I definitely think that having habits for healthy behaviours is a really good way to help our well-being, because as we discussed, in the moment that you have an opportunity to act or not act or do something else, there are a lot of demands on our time, and a lot of the time we're very stressed, we're very busy, and it's hard to intentionally make the healthy choices in each of those individual settings, and it's tiring to do that. Whereas if we can create a situation in which we have healthy habits and in which our environment supports us to perform the healthy behaviours, it means that we can continue to do those things with less effort, with less cognitive resources used up on our part, which is a really positive thing, because each individual time you make the healthy choice, it doesn't make that much difference to your health outcomes. But all those little times add up. And, each thing I eat doesn't make any difference, but my overall diet makes a big difference to my health outcomes. Each time I do a little bit of physical activity doesn't make that much difference, but every single step does add up and make a difference. So I think forming those healthy habits is a good way to have a healthy lifestyle, and therefore to have better mental and physical well-being.
Yeah, I sometimes wonder about one thing that relates to what you've just said, is that I do agree that when we have certain habits, certain routines that we follow, it's a lot easier, right? When you have every day you eat for breakfast the same thing, you know what's going to happen, so you don't have to lose all the time to think about what you might do instead of your daily routine. And if this routine is healthy, then it's even better, because it means that it's good for your overall well-being. However, I think that sometimes I get the impression that I have my whole day or my whole life scheduled, and that I only follow this healthy plan that I created for myself. What do you think about that? Do you think it's a common problem, or that I don't know, that you sort of want to that you no longer have the choice, the freedom of choice every day, because you only follow the well-established plan of good habits that you've established for yourself?
Yeah, so I think people often resist the idea of habits because of that. They feel like, I don't want my life to be boring. I don't want to only do the same things over and over and over again. But having habits doesn't mean that you don't have choice. It just means that when you're in situations where you don't have the time to make a choice, to make a conscious decision about what you're going to do, your default will be the healthy option. So if you've got time to think about it and think, right, today I don't want to do all these things. I want to go and do something completely different. I want to experiment. I want to explore. You can still do all of those things. No one's stopping you. It's just that, the default is a positive thing, which is really useful because we all live such busy lives with such complicated demands on us. It's effortful to have to make those decisions each time.
And what's your view on the notion of willpower? There is some controversy also regarding the willpower. Do you think that we have limited willpower resources, or do you think that it's not true, that there's not such thing as limited willpower?
I think willpower is just a really complicated concept, and I don't think it's very helpful. And I also think it can be very judgmental. So if someone hasn't succeeded in a goal they were working towards, just kind of judging them as if it's all their fault. Whereas actually, when you start researching habits and automatic processes, you realize that there are so many influences on each of us as individuals each day that aren't anything to do with us. There are so many things that affect what we're doing that we don't even realize. Simple things that I really enjoy the experiments that show that if you and I went to dinner and I would be affected by how much you were eating and you would be affected by how much I was eating, or the choices we made and so on. If you're having a salad and a glass of water, I'm probably less likely to eat a pie and chips and a pint of beer. But sometimes we consciously think about those things and we realize, but a lot of the time we don't realize how much the behavior of other people influences us. And there are also big companies who are making money out of, trying to influence what we do. So I think willpower is often unhelpful as a concept. I do think we have limited resources. We have limited energy within our day to apply to things. There is just a finite amount of time in your day and so on. And, and our energy does diminish across the course of the day. So I think we need to support each other and we need to help each other and we need to make good plans and try and create environments that are positive.
Mm. Have you read Atomic Habits by James Clear?
No.
Are you planning on reading that book?
No.
What's your view? Why didn't you reach for that book?
Because James Clear is a journalist, not a researcher. So I think it's nice that his work has increased the profile of habits and people being interested in them. But I personally like to read books written by academics who have done the research or fully understand all the details of the research, rather than things that are written by journalists who may less.
Mm-hmm. So for someone who would like to understand how to form a habit, would you recommend that person to reach for Atomic Habits, or to go and research in scientific articles, or look for books that are written by scientists?
I'd say they should read Wendy Wood's book, Good Habits, Bad Habits, because Wendy Wood is an amazing researcher who has been researching habits for a zillion years, and I really like her book. So if somebody was coming to the idea of habits, and didn't know anything about them, that's who I'd say they should read.
Okay, great. Thank you for recommendation. Also, I didn't read that book, so I will maybe go for it then. I haven't heard about it. We've mentioned a little bit the role of the environment. We talked about the role of the environment, that is important in habit formation. What's your view on the fact that sometimes we have those established norms, legal norms, for example, that may promote good or bad habits, like with smoking, for example, that throughout the years, there are more and more legal rules that are made for smokers to quit smoking. What do you think about that?
I'm very positive about that sort of thing. I know that lots of people find it very offensive that a government or somebody would be controlling what they can or can't do in their lives and so on. And I understand that. But as I said, I think there's a lot of things that influence us already that we don't realize are influencing us. But because it's the current situation, we're okay with it. But if the situation was much more positive in terms of, I mean, this doesn't just relate to health, in terms of, many sustainability behaviours. It's ridiculous that it's cheaper to fly somewhere than to get a train somewhere. But that's all to do with the systems that are in place. But people don't have, people have limited funds. So even if people want to be environmentally friendly, often they will then make, the choice to fly. So we already have all these structures in place that do influence our behaviours, but we're resistant to there being structures. But I think that's because we don't acknowledge that they're already there.
Yeah, and I think also we have this feeling that we are being controlled, that someone tells us what to do and what don't do. But I think I agree with you that very often those solutions should be put in place. And regarding the smoking and the role of the environment, I know that you've also conducted a study where you examined the consumer behavior in a Tesco supermarket, because they in like near the register where you leave the shop, there were all these candy bars. Well, usually when you go to a shop, there are candy bars and sweets and everything. So they removed those sweet or salty snacks from the register. And you've analyzed whether the consumption decreased or increased, right? So could you perhaps elaborate on that study?
Yeah, so that was a really interesting study where we worked with Tesco's, because, as you said, yes, they shops, their motivation is usually to sell as many products as possible, and so they would put appealing, or mostly unhealthy products by the cash registers, and then people would, they'd be standing there with their trolley about, and then be like, oh, I'll just grab one of those. And also children would say, "Mummy, mummy, daddy, daddy, please, can I have whatever shiny thing?" And then Tesco's wanted to, improve the health of people, and so they had a rule that they took those things away. And it's a little while since I worked on the paper, so I don't remember any of the numbers or the details. But in principle, it looked like that did make some difference to what people were purchasing, which is exactly what you would expect, because those products weren't things that people had intended to buy. They were only buying them because in the moment they were kind of appealing to the, they were there appealing. Whereas if you got to the counter and then you thought, oh, actually, I really wanted to buy a chocolate bar, you're probably not going to go back all the way in the supermarket to find it. But that's an example of an environmental change that can change behavior, and people the way I look at it is they were being manipulated in the first place. They were being controlled in the first place, but they didn't feel like they were. So then they might feel upset that that's being taken away, as if someone's controlling them. But actually, it was just a controlling in an unhealthy way in the first place.
Yeah. I don't know what should be, because that's very often in science you have this evidence for like systematic solutions to work, etc. But then how to actually make it happen in real life, I think it's another story, and it's often complicated to do this translation, like transference of scientific results into real life.
Well, and there's a lot of money. There's a lot of people. There's a lot of big companies who benefit if you buy all that unhealthy food. So it's a whole massive area to try and fight against that.
We've talked quite a little bit about habit formation. What about breaking bad habits? Is there some list of magic tips or whatever that can help you break a bad habit?
Yeah, so it's very difficult to actually break that mental association between a situation and action once it has developed. But there are things we can do to try and stop it actually leading to the habitual behaviour at the end. So the hardest way is to try and just stop yourself in the moment. So if you know you have a habit for, say I have a habit for eating something I don't want to eat in a specific situation, I can realise that about myself, and then I can say to myself, I'm not going to do it, I'm not going to do it, I'm not going to do it. Then I have to remember in the moment that I don't intend to do it, and then not do it, which is really hard because you have to be monitoring the whole time whether the cue has happened, and then stop yourself from doing this behaviour, which presumably you started doing because you enjoy doing it. So you've then got to stop yourself. So that's the hardest way. The easiest way is to not encounter your cue. So if there is a situation in which you perform a behaviour that you don't want to perform, if you cannot go into the situation, brilliant. It's solved. You're not going to perform the behaviour. Obviously, that's really difficult. A lot of cues are things that we cannot avoid. They're parts of my house, or, my husband, who I'm not going to divorce just because I've associated him with an inappropriate behaviour. Yeah. If I sit down in the evening with my husband and have a drink, I'm not going to not have him because I don't get rid of him. So the alternative is you remove the opportunity to perform the behaviour in that situation. So if I have a habit for sitting down with my husband in the evening and having a glass of wine, and I think, actually, that's not great, I shouldn't be doing that. If I don't want to remove my husband, I remove the wine. So if I say, no, there's not going to be any wine in my house, it's not going to be there, I could sit down with my husband in the evening and think, oh, I want a glass of wine, I'm going to get in the car and drive and buy some. But that's then not the habit. That's then me consciously deciding I want to do that behaviour. But the habit part is broken because I can't do the behaviour in that situation. So you can avoid the cue, avoid the behaviour. You can try and stop yourself from doing it. So if you can't avoid the cue or remove the opportunity to perform the behaviour, if you want to just stop yourself, we think it's better to do something else. It's really hard to do nothing. When you want to do something, just sitting there thinking, I'm not going to do it, I'm not going to do it, I'm not going to do it, it's really difficult. Yeah. But if you could do something alternative, then you've still got something to do. And the idea is that if you keep doing that over and over, in the end, the association between that situation and your new behaviour should become stronger than the original association. We haven't quite worked out how long that takes. It's going to be variable because even forming the original one is variable. But you need to choose your substitute behaviour carefully, because if you're trying to work against a habit for something that is really rewarding, if you choose an alternative behaviour that is really not rewarding at all, you're going to really struggle to make yourself do that in that situation, and it's probably going to be difficult to form that association. But if you can try to find an alternative that you do enjoy, then that will help.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you have to just find something for yourself that would be very enjoyable to you, just as, for example, the drinking of wine was. Yeah. And make it also make sure that it's not another bad habit that you're creating.
Yes.
It's important.
Don't replace one bad habit with another bad habit.
Yeah, it's not a good idea.
That's either neutral or positive.
Mm-hmm. All right. I know also that you have a number of studies on cancer patients and habits. Could you tell me, why are habits important for patients who live with cancer?
So it's not that habits are necessarily any more important for that group, but after you have cancer, if you can make sure you're doing enough, meeting the physical activity recommendations of 150 minutes of moderate to vigorous physical activity a week, eating healthily, all those things improve quality of life and improve people's physical health outcomes moving forward as well. So there are very clear recommendations on the behaviours that are recommended after people have had cancer. They're actually the same behaviours that are recommended for the prevention of getting cancer in the first place. Not smoking, not drinking, eating healthily, all those. But so people are now living, for a long time having had cancer. Survival rates are improving, which is brilliant. But it means that there's a lot of people who have had cancer who we need to promote these positive health behaviours in long term. So therefore, if we can help them form habits, then they might be able to add these behaviours into their lives long term and maintain them. So that's why we use that approach with cancer patients.
I saw that you were working on an app. I'm not sure whether it's finished or not. I only saw the study protocol publication.
Yeah, so our main trial at the moment is using a physical activity app that promotes brisk walking, because people don't always know that if you walk fast, that is a type of moderate physical activity. So often when you say to people, you need to do 150 minutes of moderate to vigorous physical activity, people just think, I can't possibly do that. I can't run. I'm not going to cycle. It's not going to happen. But actually just walking fast counts, because it can raise your heart rate, which is what, the aim is. And so we, excuse me. So in this, it's called the Approach trial, and it's funded by Yorkshire Cancer Research. So in the Dr. Abby Fisher and I are the co-PIs. But so what we do is we recommend an app which promotes brisk walking, and it's an already publicly available physical activity app. And we recommend that people use that, but we also provide them with some support. So they have a couple of telephone calls, which are intended to be the kind of conversations that nurses could have with their patients, where we talk to them about the benefits of physical activity for them, talk to them about any concerns they have, help them make some really specific plans, talk to them about the concept of habit formation, so all the things we've been talking about, make it more fun, where do you want to do it, all those things. And then they use the app to track, and they really like the app. So we've done the pilot study, which was with 90 participants, and we've now started on the main trial, which will be 470 participants. But so what we found in the pilot study was that the participants, they seem to like it. They're happy to have this information. They're having the telephone call contacts with our researcher. They like that on the app there's like little trophies they get. So for every 10 minutes a day of brisk walking, you get a little trophy, and you can aim for 3, but you can then aim for 5 if you get really good. And they find it very, very motivating. And it's a good way to help them know whether they are walking fast enough, whether it is brisk, because often people say, well, don't really know what's brisk walking, what's not brisk walking, and the app kind of helps measure that to help them get used to it. So yeah, positive outcomes so far, but we don't yet have the full outcomes of whether the intervention definitely promotes more brisk walking than not having the intervention. Right. So we have to wait for those results.
Great. Sounds great. And do you think it can also work for people who don't have cancer, who simply need more physical activity?
Yeah, the principles of habit formation are the same for everybody.
Yeah.
It's just obviously, excuse me. It's just obviously the advice that we're giving is specific to cancer. The benefits for them that are being highlighted are kind of specific for cancer patients. But the principle of making a clear plan, deciding when you're going to do it, how you're going to do it, and tracking are all very useful for anybody that wants to increase their activity.
Yeah. I think that for the last couple of years, we observe a huge gain in interest in habit formation and in good habits and healthy habits and so on. Do you also observe that? Where do you think it comes from?
Yeah, I think people have kind of always found it quite interesting. I think it perhaps has increased over recent years. I think people are always interested in behaviours and how we can encourage people to do what we want them to do. I guess there's a big, maybe I think social media has probably made a difference to there's a big self-help movement and Atomic Habits probably made a difference. It's just which is brilliant. As a researcher, I think it's brilliant that there's interest. It's just sometimes a lot of the things people say are nonsense, so then I'm screaming at my computer or at the TV going, no, don't say that, that's not a thing.
For example, what are the biggest myths that you encountered?
Well, the habit loop thing really bugs me, because it's not a loop. So people say,
what's the habit loop?
Well, they talk about they have cue, behavior, reward, but then they have a loop back again from reward to cue, and it's like there isn't a loop, there isn't a line there. It's a straight line, it's not a loop. So some of the things people are repeating the behavior in the same situation, those things are fine. It's just they people sometimes go off on random tangents that they've kind of just made up.
Yeah.
But the nature of social media is that people are more likely to listen to, an influencer or somebody than they are to academics.
Yeah, definitely. Are there any research challenges that you're facing? Are there any questions in habit research that you would like to answer but are impossible to answer for now?
It's quite challenging to see inside people's brains. And there are some amazing researchers doing some stuff trying to kind of actually see the habit forming in the brain. That's not my area at all. I just think it's amazing. For me, the challenge often is that if my research question is about assuming that someone is repeating a behavior in the same situation, what makes the habit form quicker? So if my question is about, the type of reward and how that influences the speed that those links are made, the challenge I have is that people don't do as they're told. So I have wonderful participants. I'm obviously super grateful to all my participants, and I would be exactly the same if I was a participant, that, if someone says to me, please do this every day at this time, I won't always, which then means you've got this variable that you don't actually want to have in there. I want repetition to be constant so that then I can look at the influence of the other things. But because if I'm researching people in real life, the repetition doesn't stay constant. So sometimes we're starting to do some more lab-based work where we are then in control of how many times someone has tapped a key or whatever it is, which is good because you have the control, but it's less real life. So you're kind of giving up the actual relevance to real life in order to have the control. So that's one of the big challenges we have in habit research.
And perhaps one more thing that I wanted to ask you is regarding cognitive behavioral therapy, which is used for bad habit breaking, I would say. Do you think that someone who wants to have a good, healthy habit can also use the methods from cognitive behavioral therapy, or do you think that it's a completely different thing?
No, I think they're definitely very connected. So cognitive behavioral therapy is all about encouraging people to think about their actions and what leads to their actions. So it's a very good way to help people identify cues for bad habits that they don't want to have and potential situations that could become a cue for a good habit. So I think it can be really helpful in that stage of identifying for people what they want to do, what they don't want to do, and the influences on them as well, helping think through, what is it that means I'm most likely to do that in that situation? Is it because there's a social, kind of cue there as well as because a cue can be all sorts of things. It can be a social cue, it can be a physical cue. And so trying to work that out is really important.
Mm. And don't you think that by having just this approach of cue behavior, we are a little bit dehumanizing ourselves? That we're treating ourselves as robots, that we have to train ourselves to do something? What's your view on this kind of approaches?
I think it's just acknowledging that humans are influenced by these things. I think it's part of our kind of Western culture that we like to think of ourselves as autonomous, independent beings that are totally in control of everything that we do every day. But it's not true. It's a myth. Like, we are hugely influenced by our environment, our physical environment, our social environment, and by all these associations we have in our brain that we have learnt through our entire life. So it's just not, I don't worry about it because it just is how it is. I don't think it makes us less human to acknowledge that that's the case. I think it's more about our societal constructions of what we think it means to be human.
All right, I see. Since we're meeting in January, and you've told me January especially busy for you because many people want to start new habits, so there are many people who ask you about habits and so on. I would like to ask you whether you yourself do any New Year's resolutions or whether you think it's completely useless.
No, I think New Year's resolutions can be really helpful if you do the thinking through and the planning. So I think the problem with New Year's resolutions is people kind of have some grand idea this year I am going to change this big thing in my life. And then they don't do the planning and the thinking about what they want to do. So I haven't particularly set any New Year's resolutions this year. But I might still do some planning and some thinking about what I need to change. My life's, there's kind of some changes happening in my personal life anyway, with moved house and things. So there's definitely some planning I need to do around that. But I don't if I'm making plans to change something in my life, I don't necessarily attach it to a date, to the fact that it's New Year. Especially as an academic, I live more on semesters and term times. So for me, a new year is more September than January.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much for all the interesting facts, for sharing your knowledge. I think you've helped a lot of people understanding what is a habit, how to form a habit, what is a bad habit, and all the topics surrounding that. Also, thank you for the recommendation of a book written by a scientist, not by a journalist, such as James Clear. I think it's also very, very nice to have this kind of perspective from your side. And I wish you a very good year. I hope that you will make your resolutions when you do them and you will make them come true. So thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Dr. Lally has set you a challenge. Think about the habit that you would like to implement in your life. Then make a specific plan of how you will execute it. Think of a time or situation and the environment you need to support you. So let's say that you want to meditate each day. You need to make sure that you establish the details of this routine. Time, situation, so when exactly are you going to execute your new habit? For example, right after brushing my teeth in the morning. And environment, so how can you set up your environment to make it more likely that you will do this? For example, put your yoga cushion on the floor ready the night before. Put a note in the bathroom to remind you, or set your phone to silent until you have completed your meditation practice. Establish a habit and a detailed routine. Tag us on Instagram or write us a comment and let us know what habits do you want to implement in your lives. Good luck and see you soon on Healthy Habits Podcast.